Imagine this. You're surrounded by people, notifications buzzing, group chats lighting up your phone, hundreds, maybe thousands of connections sitting quietly in your pocket, and yet, somehow, you feel completely alone. Not just a little lonely, but the kind of loneliness that feels physical, like something is missing, like your brain is searching for a signal that just isn't there. Here's the paradox that should not exist. Americans have never been more connected and never been more alone. In fact, in recent years, the U.S. Surgeon General warned that loneliness is becoming an epidemic, with health risks comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. 15. Let that sink in. Loneliness isn't just a feeling anymore. It's a public health crisis. It's quietly reshaping how we think, how we behave, even how long we live. But here's where it gets strange. This isn't just about people being shy, or introverted, or too busy, because even people who want friends, who actively try, are struggling more than ever to actually make them. So the real question isn't just why are people lonely? The real question is, why has something that used to be so natural, so automatic, become so incredibly difficult? Why does making friends in modern America feel less like bumping into someone at a park, and more like trying to crack a code no one ever taught you? And the deeper you dig into this question, the more unsettling it becomes, because the answer isn't just about culture, or technology, or even personality. It's about a hidden system, a set of invisible rules that used to bring people together without them even realizing it. A system that, quietly, has started to break, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. So what exactly changed? And more importantly, was it ever really under our control to begin with? To understand what broke, we have to rewind back to a time when friendship didn't feel like effort. In the 1970s, an average American adult reported having around 3 close friends, not acquaintances, not people you follow. Real friends, the kind you could call at 2 a.m. without overthinking it. Fast forward to today, and a growing number of Americans report having 0 close friends. 0. That's not a personality shift, that's a structural collapse. Sociologist Robert Putnam saw this coming decades ago. In his now famous work, Bowling Alone, he described something subtle but devastating. Americans weren't just becoming more isolated, they were slowly disengaging from the everyday social rituals that used to glue communities together. Bowling leagues, church groups, neighborhood hangouts, casual, repeated interactions with the same people. Not exciting, not dramatic, but incredibly powerful. Because friendship, it turns out, isn't built on deep conversations at first. It's built on exposure. In the 1960s, psychologist Robert Zajonc discovered something almost embarrassingly simple. The more often we see someone, the more we tend to like them. He called it the mere exposure effect. No deep compatibility required. No shared values test, just proximity. Repeated over time. That awkward coworker. After a few weeks, they feel familiar. That stranger at your gym. Eventually, they become the person you nod to. And one day, without noticing exactly when, it turns into a conversation. Friendship, in other words, used to be an accident. But here's the problem. Modern American life is engineered to eliminate accidents. We move more often, change jobs more frequently, work remotely, order food instead of going out, stream entertainment instead of sharing it. Even our cities designed around cars instead of walkable space is minimize random human interaction. And when you remove repeated low-stakes exposure, something critical disappears. Not connection, but the pathway to connection. Now think about social media. It promises connection at scale, but what it actually delivers is something very different. Because online, you don't get passive exposure, you get performance. Instead of slowly getting used to someone's presence, you see their highlights, their best angles, their curated identity. And instead of feeling familiar, they feel distant, untouchable. Worse, platforms are designed to maximize engagement, not friendship, which means they prioritize novelty over familiarity. New faces, new content, new stimulation, constantly. But friendship doesn't thrive on novelty. It thrives on repetition. And this mismatch creates a strange psychological trap. You're surrounded by people, but you're never around the same people long enough for a bond to naturally form. It's like planting seeds and digging them up every day to check if they've grown. So we try to compensate. We download apps, join groups, put ourselves out there in more intentional ways. But here's the irony. The more intentional friendship becomes, the more unnatural it feels. Because now, instead of letting connection emerge, we're trying to manufacture it. And humans are surprisingly bad at that. Which leads to a deeper, more uncomfortable question. If friendship isn't something we consciously build, then what invisible mechanism used to build it for us? And how exactly did we lose it? Here's the part most people get wrong. We think friendship is about finding the right people, but that's not how the brain works. Friendship is about time spent in the same pattern, and the engine behind that pattern is something so ordinary, you almost never notice it until it disappears. It's called a social container. A social container is any environment that forces repeated, low-pressure interaction with the same group of people over time. School is a container. An office used to be a container. A local cafe you visit every morning can become one. And these containers don't just bring people together, they do the emotional labor for you. Think about your childhood. You didn't network for friends. You didn't optimize your personality or rehearse conversations. You were just there. Same classroom, same faces, same schedule, day after day. At first it's awkward, then familiar, then comfortable, and eventually meaningful. That progression isn't random, it's neurological. Your brain is constantly scanning for safety, and one of the strongest signals of safety is predictability. When you see the same people over and over, without negative consequences, your brain lowers its guard. Conversation becomes easier. Silences feel less threatening. Trust starts forming quietly, in the background. Not because you tried harder, but because the environment made it inevitable. Now here's the twist. Modern life didn't just reduce social interaction, it destroyed the container. Remote work means no shared physical space. Gig economies mean no stable peer group. Algorithms mean your social environment is constantly shifting. You're no longer inside a system that repeats. You're inside a system that refreshes, and that changes everything. Because without repetition, the brain never gets enough data to mark someone as safe. Every interaction resets to zero. Every conversation feels like a first impression, and first impressions are exhausting. This is why making friends as an adult feels so draining. It's not that you've become worse at socializing, it's that you're trying to build emotional trust without the infrastructure that used to support it. Imagine trying to grow a forest, but every night, the soil resets. That's what modern social life has become. And here's where it gets even more subtle. When interactions feel effortful, your brain interprets that as a warning signal. Maybe this isn't worth it. Maybe this person isn't a good fit. Maybe I should just go home. So you leave, not because you failed, but because your brain is responding logically to a broken system. Over time, this creates a feedback loop. Fewer repeated interactions gives less familiarity, gives more discomfort, gives earlier withdrawal, gives even fewer interactions. And eventually, isolation feels like the default, not chosen, but inherited, which leads to the final, uncomfortable realization. If loneliness isn't just a personal problem, if it's the result of a system quietly working against us, then fixing it might require something we rarely consider. Not changing who we are, but changing the environments we place ourselves in. And once you see that, the solution starts to look very different. So here we are, a generation told to put yourself out there, in a world that quietly removed all the structures that made that work. And maybe that's why this feels so personal. Because when friendship doesn't happen, it feels like a failure of personality. Like you said the wrong thing. Like you're not interesting enough. Like everyone else got the manual, and you didn't. But zoom out for a second. What if the real problem isn't you? What if you've been trying to grow something that was never meant to grow in isolation? Because for most of human history, loneliness like this didn't really exist at scale. Humans evolved in small, stable groups. Tribes, villages, communities where leaving the social network wasn't just hard, it was almost impossible. You didn't find your people, you inherited them. The same faces every day, for years. And within that repetition, something powerful happened. Not instant chemistry, not perfect compatibility, but something more durable. Familiarity turned into trust. Trust turned into belonging. No apps required. Now compare that to today. We've optimized for freedom, mobility, choice. You can live anywhere, work anywhere, talk to anyone. But in gaining all that flexibility, we may have quietly lost the one thing friendship depends on most: stability. Because friendship isn't built in moments, it's built in patterns. And patterns require time, friction, and most importantly, consistency. So maybe the solution isn't to become more charismatic, or more confident, or more social. Maybe the solution is simpler, and harder at the same time. To stop chasing connection, and start engineering repetition, going to the same place, at the same time, every week. Not because it's exciting, but because it's consistent. Letting interactions be awkward at first, without escaping them. Giving your brain time to recognize, hey, this is safe. Because that's the part nobody tells you. Friendship feels natural only after it becomes familiar. Before that, it's clumsy, uncertain, even uncomfortable. And that discomfort, it's not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're early in the process. So the next time you feel that quiet, heavy sense of loneliness, instead of asking, what's wrong with me? Try asking a different question. Where is my container? Where in your life do the same people show up? Again and again. And if the answer is nowhere, then maybe that's where to begin. Not by finding the perfect people, but by creating the conditions where people can slowly, naturally, become yours. Because in the end, Friendship was never about luck. It was about proximity, repeated over time, until strangers stopped feeling like strangers. And maybe the real epidemic isn't loneliness itself, but a world that forgot how connection actually works. So here's something worth thinking about. If you redesigned your life not for efficiency, not for freedom, but for connection, what would you change first?